Aloha mai kako. My name is ʻIhilani Lasconia. The date is April 12th, 2021. And with me today, I have my mom, Trisha Lasconia. Would you like to say hi, Mom?
Aloha.
And so she's with me today because I finally really just wrapped up the last final pieces of my honors portfolio project, Namamwakakawa Mo'olelo from the Front Lines of Protecting Mauna Kea. And I thought, what better way to finally wrap up this project than through conducting an interview with my mother, where she asked me the questions that I asked other interviewees to get a better insight to what my experience has been like, not just in the movement to protect Mauna Kea, but at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And as a first-generation college student, these past 4 years at UH Manoa have definitely been an academic experience, getting my BA in Ethnic Studies, getting a minor in Political Science and a certificate in Women's Studies, now being a first-year master's student in Education Administration through the BAM program. Yeah, so pretty much been very involved in academics, but these past 4 years have been an academic journey just as much as it's been one of reclaiming my language, learning more about what it means to be Hawaiian, and also what it means to be Kanaka Maoli in a 21st century learning environment that is the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And so much of my experience at the university in these past 4 years has been with the movement to protect Mauna Kea. I feel like I really, in a sense, did grow up in this movement, and so much has changed since I was a freshman in college. And although my mom and I, we live on the same island, I'm mostly in Manoa, and I'm hardly ever home. So it's rare for us to get to talk story. And now that I'm finally graduating in a few weeks, I really wanted to take this time to share with you a little bit about my experience in this movement, how it ties to my experience at the university, to give you a better insight as to what my university experience has been like. So my mom's going to ask me the questions. I'm going to answer as genuinely as possible, and we'll go from there. Mom, are you ready to begin?
All right, let's get started.
And do I have your consent to continue recording?
Aye.
Awesome.
Okay, Ihi. When did you get involved with the movement to protect Mauna Kea?
That's a good question. And I think it really started the first week of being at the University of Hawaii at Manoa in the fall semester of 2017, when a now really good friend of mine, Kaipu Baker, who I interviewed in this portfolio, invited me to attend the Board of Regents meeting. And I didn't even know what the Board of Regents was at the time. But I went and I sat in, and I knew just like a little bit of what was going on with the construction of the telescope. Didn't necessarily have an opinion on that, but really just seeing the ways in which Kanaka Maoli students, faculty, and staff gave such passionate protests, and the way that the Board of Regents didn't really pay attention to them at all. Like seeing how none of them looked up from their laptops from what they were doing. Like it was really heartbreaking, and it wasn't discouraging at all, but it instilled this sense of drive and this passion within me to actually know what's going on, know what other Kanaka Maoli at the university are thinking, who have been there longer than I am, and how to get involved. And then I joined Kia'i Kahokani, which is a student group at the University of Hawaii that's for the protection of Mauna Kea. I got involved in student organizing with leaders on campus such as Noelani Gadrikaupua, Ilima Long, and just Joy Anamoto, definitely, who have really mentored me and taught me what it means to be a student organizer, because they've been protesting and resisting the university while being a part of it for many years.
Okay. What is your affiliation with the University of Hawaii at Manoa?
Oh, okay. So I'm so familiar with these questions, but I already kind of answered it. So I'm currently a student, graduating with my BA in Ethnic Studies in the spring, in a couple weeks. And I'm also a first-year master's student through the Bachelor's and Master's program with Ethnic Studies. So I'm currently a first-year master's student in Education Administration, Higher Education. I also work for the university, and I have for 3 years in Student Housing Services, the Office of Residential Life, where for 2 years I worked with first-year students, and this year I'm in apartment life.
What inspired you to stand so strongly for the protection of Mauna Kea?
I think really going back to that first Board of Regents meeting, even though I pretty much had no idea what was going on, seeing the fire and the passion in other people's eyes, it made me want to learn more. And I think being involved in ethnic studies, getting to take Olala Hawaii or Hawaiian language classes, it's kind of like all the pieces were connecting at the same time. And Mauna Kea, like for so many people, was this center or this piko, and this catalyzation of what it meant to be Hawaiian. And this movement really did wake me up to my kuleana, or my responsibility to the lahui. And it was just being involved in the movement in any capacity that I could, whether it be like through writing testimony, then doing art demonstrations. And like the more involved I got and the more I learned about this movement while being a part of it, the more inspired I was and committed to stand so strongly for the protection of Mauna Kea.
How has your relationship with the University of Hawaii changed since being involved with this movement?
Well, thankfully, I have been a part of the Department of Ethnic Studies since my first semester getting into HMNOA, and that was totally happenstance because I was part of this random cluster program. Of course, as I actually thought ethnic studies was ethic studies, but yeah, it's kind of funny, but being involved in ethnic studies from the get-go always taught me to be highly critical of the spaces that I'm a part of, and to always be observant of what's going on, and the politics of everything. And so being a part of such a supportive department really allowed me to be critical of the university from the get-go. So I say that I've never really entered the university with rose-colored glasses, but I think the way that my relationship with the university has changed is now that I'm moving on from my undergraduate to a graduate degree in education administration, just getting to understand a little bit better the internal workings and the political structure of the University of Hawaii, not just as an educational institution, but one of like a lot of power, not just as an academic institution, but a hub of power like for the state of Hawaii and the Pacific. It really inspired me to look at this relationship as one is not just like me going to the university to get an education, but to go into the university to change it in some way, shape, or form, because education and educating Hawaiians within this institution is something that's really important to me.
How do you envision a Hawaiian place of learning?
I mean, I know this question, but still, like, I don't have a concrete answer. And through doing all these interviews with different people and getting to hear how other people envision a Hawaiian place of learning, I do think it's one that needs to be where kanaka don't just exist, but they're at the helm of leadership. So we don't just have Hawaiian kumu, Hawaiian teachers or lecturers or students, but we have kanaka maoli rooted in culture, rooted in the political history of Hawaii, that are making decisions within this place. And it's not just that kanaka have a seat at the table every now and then, but they're the ones who are shaping that table and building that table and constantly changing what that table looks like for everyone. But yeah, it's as I enter my master's in education administration, I definitely think my answer is going to change and develop and perhaps be more concrete. But yeah, how I envision a Hawaiian place of learning is one, like Hawaii's political history at the center of it, and understand that political history is going to drive where we're going, one that's rooted in language, and an institution that truly values education and the presence of kanaka, and not just the branding of Hawaiianness in this institution.
How do you sustain yourself throughout this movement?
That's been really hard, and as someone who's only 22, I can still say that burnout is super real. I remember it was in the fall of 2019. The summer was really hectic. I was on the Mauna for a little bit. Then I went away to Italy and England for a Hawaiian Youth Abroad program, and came back. I literally caught a flight from like London Heathrow to Honolulu, and then straight to the dorm. So right off the bat, like I was just exhausted. And then doing that whole fall 2019 semester, flying every couple of weeks to the Mauna, then doing school full time, then flying back again. that was so exhausting. And then Corona hit, and everything was online, so it really forced me to stop. And in a way, I don't know what happened. What would have happened if I continued to run at that capacity I needed to? But really, in terms of sustaining myself, knowing what I can say yes to and what I can say no to. And so Ilima Long, one of my mentors, has always taught me to be a student organizer, to be a student leader, you need to make yourself replaceable. So understanding that I can't be the only one to do it, but it's my job to mentor and teach others, so that if I'm not there, if I'm not able to show up, like, things are going to be okay. That's something I'm still definitely working on. But using my passion for education and political education and teaching others has sustained me, because it's something that gives me deep joy, and prevents me from being burnt out. Yeah.
What specific aspects of the movement have inspired you to create art?
So I really have to thank my department, Ethnic Studies, for giving me a platform to create art and to share art. So shout out to Pauhana Sessions, Professor Rod, Dr. E, Dr. Ruben Campos. I was actually, when I was on the Mauna, that they came and they did like a recording session where I was able to share some of my poetry, my rap, and like my spoken art, or spoken word, excuse me. And it was them encouraging me to share, being in the midst of all this chaos, all this organizing, all this kaumaha, or this sadness, really, that inspired me. And I think the adrenaline that you get from doing an action, standing on a front line, giving testimony, really inspired me. It's like you're feeling all these emotions, and one of the best things I did to channel that and also kind of to sustain myself was just to write it out and express myself in a way that was highly personal, but I still felt comfortable enough to share with the rest of the world. But yeah, definitely having those experiences, being on the Mauna, organizing on campus, and just being around other really great artists.
How has your art helped you to stay connected to this movement?
Especially now that everything's virtual and I don't really see a lot of people in person, just looking back on the art that I did get to create, the poems that I got to share, the recorded sessions that I got to do, whenever I'm feeling down or like not feeling very motivated, I go back like to the Pauhana Sessions YouTube page or like an Instagram page, and I look at my art, or I even just go into my journal and I look at poems and I look at entries, and it really just reminds me that this movement is alive. It's continuing. It exists not just on the Mauna, but within our lives, and the way that we choose to carry on this movement, the way that we choose to carry on these discussions and continue to educate people. Yeah, looking back at the art and the things that I've written, I can't believe it almost feels nostalgic now. Like it's been like almost 2 years since being on the Mauna, but just looking back at those pieces has helped me to stay connected and reminds me that this is still real and that the fight's not over.
Aye. What has creating this project meant for you?
For me, so it wasn't really my intention to go to the University with honors, and I actually only joined honors in my junior year. And around that time was when honors students at like my class standing were already writing their proposals. And so being still organizing on campus, and then like quickly getting involved with honors, to talking to Dr. Bernadette, just by happenstance, I joined the honors program because I walked into the honors office to talk about another study abroad opportunity, and then I walked out with like the forms in my hand. Sorry, I'm trailing off a little bit. But creating this project for me, it really was a culminating experience. So getting the time to take a step back and to actually listen to the stories of the people that I was co-organizing with, people that I was writing songs with. For me, this project was a breath of fresh air and diving back into the things we experienced. So I know that we'll never get to experience the same things twice, but getting to experience listening to how people have had those shared experiences with me has been super important and super meaningful. And although it was never my intention to go into honors, I'm really so happy that I did, because I got this project because of it, you know?
Yeah.
And it's more than just the accolades or getting like the gold cord, which is super cool, but it's having an archive of these stories that need to be told, because like literally everyone that I interviewed is so humble, doesn't need to be on the front page of Flux or whatever, but the work that they put in deserves to be shared. It deserves to be heard, and not ever like in an over glorifying way, but in a way that I want people to look at these stories and understand that it's like it's everyday people who just give it their all that are the reason this movement continues. And especially, and I talk about this a little bit in my on my website, but it's showing people that front lines don't just exist on Mauna Kea, but it's in the classrooms, it's in the kitchen tables, it's those really hard discussions that you need to have, and it's like each one teach one. If you can change a mind, then we shift a little bit closer to our goal, you know. So for me, it's going back to it, taking a step back, taking a deep breath, and just appreciating this movement for all that it is in the unique lives and experiences of those I've been lucky enough to share it with.
If you could say anything to your kupuna or mo'opuna, what would it be?
It's funny, whenever I ask this question to other people I'm interviewing, I always get so excited to hear what they say, and now that this is coming to me, I think I finally feel the weight of this question. It's a lot. So if I could say anything to my kupuna, I may not know all of your names, but I will one day, and thank you for protecting me. I can feel you around me. I felt you on the Mauna. I feel you when I'm here. Thank you for looking out for me, because I wouldn't have been able to be here without you. And to my kupuna, who our language was literally beaten out of them, I'm doing everything that I can so that it starts with me, and that the keiki that I have, the mo'opuna that I have, will be able to dream in our language, to know what it's like to feel connected to their kupuna through a shared language, throh Olelo Hawaii. To my kupuna, I'm doing the best I can. I know I mess up sometimes, but I'm trying my best, and it really is for you folks. And I know that your wildest dreams of mine would have never been to go to college. I know that's not the end goal, but I hope that through obtaining this education, that I can learn more about you and fight for the future that you dreamed that I should have, because I want to give that to my mo'opuna. So to my mo'opuna, I love you, even though I don't know your names or your faces. I'm looking out for you. Just like my kupuna, I'm doing everything that I can to make sure that you have a future where you're able to dream in our language, like I said before, where you're able to choose the path that you want for yourself, and that you don't have to go through the eha and the hurt and the trauma that comes with relearning your language, that comes with not feeling like you're Hawaiian enough, that you will always know that just not when no matter if I'm here or not, that I'll always be here to protect you, to love you, to support you, and that I may not know you yet, but I am so proud of you. Yeah.
Good word, Ihi.
Thank you so much. So that concludes the very final portion of my portfolio project, the Ma Makakawa, Mo'olelo from the front lines of protecting Mauna Kea. And that concludes our interview. Thank you.
Mahalo.